Welcome to Try Not to Overthink It, where we explore the intricate landscape of mental health, well being, and everyday life. I'm RJ.
And I'm Kalhil.
Join us as we dive into insightful conversations, share expert perspectives, and personal stories that shed light on the various dimensions of mental wellness. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or a deeper understanding of the human mind, this podcast is your safe space to engage, learn, and navigate the journey to a happier, healthier self. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe to this video. Hit that notification button so you do not miss out on any future content. So today we are going to be unpacking the topic of investing in yourself. For me, this is a very important topic because everyone wants a better life, everyone wants better money, everyone wants better relationships, but nobody wants to put in the boring work that it takes to be a better person. And you will often see where people will take the time to upgrade their phones every year, but won't upgrade their habits for free.
hmm
And that is always a perplexing thing to me as a provider, where we have every reason and every opportunity to change, but then we won't, but then we will complain and not understand why we're at the same point. So today we're going to get into the real topic of investing in yourself, the glow up that nobody posts about, but every one of us needs and is in desperate key word here, desperate need of actually working on. So what do you think about that, Khalil?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this topic up because, we've talked about it in the past, but from a different angle. Investing in yourself takes dedication, right? But it also takes a certain level of self-awareness, right? I've told this story in the other episode we did, and, about using your resources and expanding your network, right? We did that episode. And one of the things that I had to do is I had to get myself some mentors, right? I had to start to ask people what I needed to do to make it to that next level. And a lot of people, and that takes accountability, right? I had to be accountable for the things that I needed to change, but that took a level of humility, right? Because I really had to, uh, you know, be self-aware about the things that I struggled with, right? In order for me to get to that next level, right, I really had to look at a lot of the things that were holding me back. Everybody has barriers, right? We have strengths, weaknesses, barriers, right? And investing in myself, I had to start looking at where some of my barriers were, some of my weaknesses were, some of the things that were keeping me from being the best version of myself, right? I told the story the last time. I was having a rough time at my job. I just got my license and I'm sitting there like, man, what am I gonna do? I said, I don't know if I really want to stay at this job. And luckily, my wife at the time, she knew somebody who had their own private practice. And, he said, "Hey, why don't you come in, man?" And, he didn't really, trip on me or anything like that. He wasn't trying to sell me on coming in full time. He said, "Come in." He said, "I want you to be able to see some clients, man, and tell me how you like it." He was like, "Look, I know you just got your license and, things are opening up for you, but, I want you to try this out for a second, see how you like it." Well, long story short, the job that I was working, I eventually ended up leaving the job. It was just too much, right? And so I remember telling my wife, I was like, "I'm leaving." She was like, "What do you mean you're leaving?" Because that was a stable sense, a stable income for me, right? That was our sense of stability. And I sat there and I was like, "Man, I've done a lot of work to get here to this point. I'm gonna bet on myself, right?" I spent all this time investing in getting licenses, certified, studying, taking all these classes, and I took a lot of CEUs outside of the stuff I needed to do because I wanted to learn more, right? Trauma classes, this, that, and the third. And I said, "Hey, I invested in myself. I am going to stand on what I did, right? And I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do full-time private practice." And I jumped out there, and before I knew it, I was getting flooded with requests, right? And I was like, "Oh my gosh," and that's how God does, right? Um, I spent all that time and it was finally paying off for me. It took a while. I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody, oh, yeah, I invested myself. And all of a sudden, a week later, it turned around. No, it took me 3 years to get to where I am now. You know what I'm saying? And I'm very grateful for the opportunity that someone gave me. Right. But at the same time, I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't invest in myself. There were times where, like I said, my wife was financially insecure. She's like, I don't know about you doing this, and this will mess up our money, our income. And I said, no, I've invested in myself. I spent that time to learn this craft. I studied under other people. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can do this. And it wasn't just me being prideful because I knew God had me, right? Like I had just kept getting this voice in the back of my head was like, it's time for you to go. It's time for you to do what you need to do. And I left the facility I was working at. And, long story short, boom, here I am now, right? And there's some success, but at the same time, I wouldn't have got that if I didn't invest in myself and believe in myself.
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you just said, right? Like, for a lot of us, we struggle with the uncomfortable truth of certain things. And something that you kind of touched on was the fact that you had to step past your fears and step into what was supposed to be for you. For a
Mhm.
lot of us, our fear of the unknown, keeps us locked in place and
Yeah.
keeps us from investing in ourselves, right? And one of the things I had to point out to one of my clients today when we were sitting down was for a lot of us, we will spend $200 on a night out, but won't spend $20 on a book or some sort of program to change your
Right.
life for the better.
Right.
We put our time, our effort, our attention, our energies into the wrong things, not really understanding that, you know, we, and I've said this in a previous episode, right? About the things that you feed are going to be the things that you grow.
Right.
So
Right.
you can feed things to grow for the detriment to you, but you can also feed things to grow for the betterment of you. And where a lot of us, because we're controlled by fear, we're controlled by things that we know are a sure thing, we're controlled by things that are familiar and comfortable to us, we will invest in distractions before we ever invest in direction. And so for me as a provider, I had to be more cognizant and more aware, especially when I'm talking to clients about improving their lives and growing in their lives, like pointing out to them about how we should always be aiming to only participate in things that are going to help us accomplish a goal.
Right.
And this is an episode, it kind of came to me, when I was talking to Ann about it, but we need to do an episode about a plan in action versus a plan in theory. For a lot of us, we have all these plans, but we don't do the things to put the plans into actual action. And so when you're putting plans in action, you see things start to come together. Like for you, you took that opportunity, you invested in yourself, you took that shot. Yes, it took you some time, but it eventually paid off. And look where you are at now in comparison to where you would have been had you stayed in place. And
Exactly.
so, as I said before, going back to one of my previous points about distractions, as everyday human beings that are traversing the thing that we call life, if things do not grow you, it's just entertaining you. And so everything that you should be putting your time, effort, and energy into should be geared towards helping you grow and not just helping entertain you or be a distraction.
Yeah. The craziest thing that I think during my time of growth, right? During my time of self growth and investing in myself, right? I was reading a lot of books. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
More than I read now, which I need to read. I need to start reading some of the things that I had to learn, right? I had to learn how money works. That's one of the
Mhm.
things I did. You know, some of the things that I think we struggle with, especially in the African American culture, right? Is understanding money, right? Yes, money is a resource, right? But in order to use the money in the right way, right, and not just be a consumer, you have to invest it. And investing in yourself, right, pays dividends. All right. A lot of people don't understand that. I remember I was reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Richest Man in Babylon, all that Power of Zero, all those famous books, right? You're reading these things and you start to understand, right? If I don't if I don't understand how to use my money, right? If I don't invest in the right things, right? All I'm doing is being a consumer. Right? So that's one thing. Remember, I said strengths, weaknesses, and barriers. A barrier for me was RJ spoke on it earlier. I might spend $200 on something like tennis shoes, right? But feel like $200 was a lot to take a class, a self help class, right? Like that type of stuff, which would have helped me, right? I didn't want to put my money into, right? Which is crazy because you're saying, hey, you want to learn more, you want to, be able to move up in whatever job you're doing. Well, you need to invest in yourself. You've got to take some classes. You need to step out there and do some things, learn the basics, right? On whatever you want to do with your life. You need to start off. I don't care if you have a degree or whatever you have, right? In order to reach that pinnacle, that place that you want to be at, you're going to have to invest in yourself. And investments, it means that you're going to have to spend some money, right? So I did some things that I wasn't usually doing, right? I decided to start taking certain classes outside. Like I said, I already had a degree. I was taking this outside of school, like because I wanted to learn, and I started investing in other things. Hey, look, for a long time, I never invested in my physical health, right? I said, hey, you know what? I've gained too much weight. I've been sitting here at the desk reading these books all day in school. Boom, I start going to the gym a little more, right? Then I started to invest in my emotional health, right? I started going back to see a therapist, right? Because this is something I did, but I only did sparingly. I said, you know what? I have some stuff I need to get off my chest. I have some stuff that keeps me from reaching the goals that I want to reach, right? There's a fear of failure, right? And other things that were barriers for me, right? So I went to talk to a therapist, right? Then also, besides just improving some of my skills, right? I started saving money. I started using money in a different way than I used it before, right? I was like, look, I'm gonna put some money aside because I never know what's gonna happen, right? I might decide to leave this job, so I need to have a good nest egg, right? I decided, hey, you know what? I'm gonna organize my life differently, right? I stopped hanging around certain people. Stopped going to certain places, right? I said, hey, I'm gonna take time to focus on me. I forgot who said it. It's a quote where somebody had mentioned like, when people are changing, you usually don't see them change. Usually they got to go somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they step away for a while, and then all of a sudden you come back. You're like, man, hey, man, where you been? What's going on, man? You, you're successful. You're doing something else. They took a step away. They had to leave for a minute, right? It's even biblical. You see it in the Bible. Moses was gone for a pretty long time, right? Before he went back. Look, he went to the Midianites before he went back to Pharaoh. Remember, he had to take some time off before he went back, right? These are things where uh, David David was running from Saul for a pretty long time before he became king, right? He took a step out, said, "Hey, let me go get myself together." These are things that prompted me to kind of remove myself from a lot of the stuff I was doing previously around the same people. I have some of my friends where they know there was a period of time where it was darkness. They couldn't really reach me. I would try to reach out here and there, but you wasn't finding me every day because I was going to school or I was taking this class or I was trying to do something different in my life, right? I had to step away from people. You know, these are things that help me reinvent myself, right? And help me invest in myself. These are things that help me change. It wasn't, like I always tell people, man, school was awesome. You know what I'm saying? I gained a lot of knowledge from school, but it wasn't like that. I had to put myself around people who were willing to mentor me, willing to push me to that next level. I had to take people's advice. which I wasn't doing. There was a time where I wouldn't listen to anybody, right? Lean out on thine own understanding, right? I always leaned on my own understanding and I would get the results I would get. Like I literally started listening to people, taking advice from people who had done it before, right? Start following in their footsteps and trying to create my own way. I mean, of course, I didn't do everything exactly how they told me to do. But one of my mentors, Dr. Frederick Woods, one of the first things he said to me, man, he said, "Hey, look, you want to be a professional, get yourself a good suit." Right? He said, he said, "I know you can't afford, at the time I had no money." He's like, "I know you can't afford a expensive suit, but get you a nice suit." He's like, "Blue goes with everything." He's get you a blue suit. He said, "You go to church, you go to a function, right? Get yourself a suit. Dress for success, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get you a few shirts, dress for success." And I invested in myself. Look, I hadn't had a suit since my mother bought me a suit. You got to think
Mm-hmm.
about this, right? I did not buy a suit since literally my mom bought me my last suit. I probably was like 20, 21, right? I hadn't bought a suit in over 15 years before that. I wasn't wearing suits. I'll go to church. I might have slacks on, maybe a dress shirt here and there, but I wasn't even really going to church. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you all. I wasn't doing any of those things with my life, right? So that was help. That was investing in myself, right? Going to get a suit, trying to dress for
Mm-hmm.
success, dress for the job you want, right? So I dressed up and, I looked sharp and practice. I hadn't tied a tie in so long, RJ. I forgot how to tie a tie. I had to practice tying a tie. I had to do all those different things, man, and start changing my behaviors, right? Like, hey, I didn't just go to an interview going in there with the mindset, I just need to get this job to get some money. No, I was looking for jobs that were going to help me in my career. The funniest thing is before I got the job where I was working with RJ, um, I had a few people who worked at like Mazda, Toyota, some factories and stuff. They were paying pretty darn decent. You know what I'm saying? This is back in 2016. And I was finished. I was in school. I was trying to finish up my undergrad and I was struggling. And I was like, man, I need some money. One of my mentors, again, he was like, Khalil, how is that job going to help you achieve what you want to reach for the future? You told me you want to be a therapist. How much therapy are you going to do working in a factory? Right. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
man, but you know how expensive my bills are. I got child support to pay. I got all these different things I'm trying to do, man. And he was like, look, I know you might not want to work at the mental health center, right? Especially on the psych floor. But he was like, that's going to give you some real experience with mental health. He's like, you're going to have the grassroots experience. You're going to be able to see it at its worst, right? And till today, I always mention that the stuff that I did at that time was life changing for me when it came to I wouldn't have understood anything in the DSM-5 if I hadn't have worked at the mental health center in the inpatient psych floor. I would have never known some of these things. I would have got that DSM-5 and been like, what the hell is this? Well, I got to see some of that live and direct, live and in touch. And these are things RJ probably forgets. I was asking him questions. I was like, man, is this real? I was like, this is a real diagnosis, right? Is this what these people really do? Because I was interested. I needed to know certain stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't have got that knowledge if I would have took the job with my friends working at Mazda, Toyota, or somewhere else, right? Polaris or one of those other places. I might have got paid more money, but I wouldn't have got that education. So I had to invest in myself. That was a sacrifice. I had to invest. I said, hey, look, I'm going to work this job and I'm going to suffer a little bit. I'm going to have to rearrange my finances. I'm going to have to do some things. And I ended up working two jobs to support myself, right? In order for me to keep working at the psych uh, floor. I couldn't have worked there if I didn't have that second job. But I was getting extra hours. I was doing everything I could because I wanted to invest in myself. I said, I'm going to be a therapist one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, and see, you spoke to something there, right? Like for a lot of us, and this was something that I personally struggled with, of being broke versus being undisciplined.
That's right.
Sometimes it's not a lack of money, it's a lack of priorities. And so for a lot of us, we will use the excuse of I don't have the money to not to not invest into the things that are what we desperately need to get to the next level.
That's right.
And that's where, for me, as you know, sitting down, and we talked about this in a previous episode about sitting down and doing a self assessment of yourself, because for a lot of us, it comes down to us versus ourselves.
Hmm.
You have to talk yourself into doing the right things and out of doing the wrong things. And when when I got to the point to where I started to sit down with myself and ask myself, where I found time for Netflix, I found time for Hulu, I found time for Crunchyroll, I found time for Disney Plus, for playing the Nintendo Switch, for playing the PlayStation. The same way that I can find time to do things that are not going to help me grow, not be help me self actualize. But then I can't spend 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes there doing things that are going to help me be better, such as praying, such as doing a daily Bible study, meditating, thinking about where I went wrong on certain things and what I can do to be better. I wasn't taking myself serious.
Right.
And once I sat down and started to unpack those things for myself, I started to recognize that certain doors started to open up for me because I was taking myself seriously. And people, as you alluded to, when you take yourself seriously, other people start to take you seriously because they
That's
can
right.
see they can see the change occur. It's like a light switch coming on. So you're showing up to stuff on time. You're dressing for success. You're talking with success. You're manifesting success around you because you're doing all the things necessary to be successful in that spot. And so for a lot of us, as you alluded to, it starts with the mindset shift of, if I want to be in a certain place, if I want to have certain conversations, if I want to be a part of certain conversations, I want to be a part of certain movements, I have to act like I already am there.
Exactly.
The time to get yourself ready for a test is not in the test. It's before the test. So like when Kalhil and I, his licensure exam was different than my licensure exam, but the process for it was still the same. You had to prepare for the exam before you sat up in that bad boy. If not, you were just wasting your money. And I know lots of people who've wasted money in regards to, I took
Over
it
and
and I
over.
failed, and I took it and I failed. For me, I don't fail. I manifest that every single day because I know that I put forth the effort. I sacrificed at the beginning so that I could do what I want to do later on down the line. And that's where, for a lot of us, we do not realize that discipline is the investment. That is the flex. The
Yes.
results they may not come today, they may not come tomorrow, but they're going to come somewhere. Eventually, when you do things and you're investing and you're doing the work, you will eventually get the results that you want. When you look at people who go to the gym, those people that are swole and jacked up like an anime character,
They
they're in
invest.
the gym every day. They're investing in the work every single day, regardless if they feel like it, regardless if they want to, regardless if, they got the time for it. As my man CT Fletcher, the Compton Superman, used to say, you have to be obsessed with it. It has to become a beautiful obsession, meaning that you're so dedicated to being the best version of yourself, and you're so dedicated to investing in yourself. Guess what? Nothing else matters. Me not getting enough sleep, that shit don't matter. Me not having enough to eat, that shit don't matter. My boo thing, we getting into it, that shit don't matter neither. Because guess what? I have a goal, and nothing is gonna get in between me and my goal. And like my father says all the time, and I was just having this conversation with some of my employees over the weekend at work. The stress is between you and the task. It's you versus yourself.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
how, yeah, and which voice are you gonna tune out, and which voice are you gonna listen to? Because you will always have that voice that tells you to stop. You will always have that voice that tells you to quit. You always have that voice that tells you, oh, my back hurts, my stomach hurt, my pinky toe hurts, my thigh hurts. And you'll just keep having that voice that will give you an excuse to stop and to give up on your dream and to give up on yourself. And then you also have that voice that tells you that you're enough. You have that voice that tells you that you can do it, that you will do it, that that greatness is inside of all of us. You will have that voice. So which one are you going to listen to? Because again, whichever one you feed, whichever one you entertain, whichever one you give life is going to be the one that grows and manifests in you. And
That's right.
that's where for a lot of us, we have to sometimes start to reevaluate things about ourselves, also the circle that we surround ourselves with. Because as I said in our most recent episode, winners hang out with winners and losers hang out with losers. Because, as the adage goes, birds of a feather flock together. So if
Hmm.
I'm winning all the time, there's nobody in my circle that's losing.
That's not winning. Right. Right.
we
Right.
all, I mean,
You winning.
excuse me, we're all winners. So if you keep losing, then we collectively as a circle gonna get you together because we got to get you winning too.
Hmm.
Because again, if we have nothing in common, why are we hanging out?
That's
And
right.
that's where, as I said before, we are our circle and who we surround ourselves with is just as important as the goals that we set for ourselves. Because our circle will keep us motivated. Our circle will keep us on track. Our circle will hold us accountable. When you watch one of my favorite anime of all time is Dragon Ball Z. Goku has Vegeta. Goku is very lackadaisical. Goku laughs and jokes all the time. Goku doesn't take things as seriously as he should all the time. Vegeta, on the other hand, does not. He does not play the radio. He is constantly looking to improve himself. He is constantly looking to grow. He is constantly looking to be the best fighter that he can be. And by him doing those things, it pushes Goku to do those things. And they push each other. They sharpen each other. They keep each other on their toes because one sharpens the other, and your circle is a direct reflection of who you are deep down inside. Because again, you don't hang out with people if you don't have nothing in common with them.
That's right.
I will say this though, right? Something that's very important about investing in yourself is and something that you touched on about the suit and about looking some type of way and about being some type of way is self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care is not always cute. Real self-care is uncomfortable, meaning that you got to do the therapy. You got to cut the dead weight off, meaning relationships, interactions, friendships, whatever it is. If it's not geared towards helping you be the best version of yourself, if it's not an asset, it is a liability. You also have to do something as simple as go to bed on time. Like, I cannot tell you how many people, like, I remember being a kid and that was the thing of being a rapper is I don't sleep. I'm in the studio all the time. And so people thought that was a thing to be up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning every day working on music. Well, when are you resting? When is your mind ever at peace? It's not, because you're going from the studio to home, somewhere else to somewhere else. You're just constantly moving all the time without getting any consistent, healthy amount of rest. And the thing about it though is this right here. Like, I was just having this conversation with a client this morning. Healing isn't aesthetic. Growth is awkward. It's going to be, sometimes it's going to be clumsy. Sometimes it's not going to be smooth. Sometimes it's not going to be coordinated. Sometimes you may trip and fall, bump your head, but you got to
Right.
get yourself off. You got to dust yourself off, and you got to keep it moving. You know, if, and as I tell people all the time, if things feel too easy, it probably is, and it probably
Yeah.
isn't going to change you. As Kalhil alluded to in a mindfulness minute that he shot about growth and about change, there is a certain amount of uncomfortability, stretching and pulling that occurs when you are growing. And a lot of times what makes it uncomfortable is it's not that it becomes uncomfortable for you. It becomes uncomfortable for the people around you that are used to
Uh,
who you used to be.
Used to be.
Some
Well,
people, as you start to grow and you start to elevate, you outgrow them. And one reason that a lot of us don't invest in ourselves is because we are afraid of losing the people that we've always had around us. And as I tell people, and I've said on here several times, those people who mind, they do not matter. And those people who matter do not mind. They will cheer you on. They will pour into you. They will keep you focused. They will keep you accountable. And they will keep you dedicated to the overall arching task, the goal at hand. Whereas the people who were never really supposed to be a part of your story in the first place, they're going to do everything they can to be a distraction, to be a hindrance, to be a disturbance. Or as me and my sister like to joke about whenever we answer the phone for each other, how can I be an impediment to you on your journey to greatness today? How can I be of disservice to you? And you'll
Right.
start to see that where people you thought were your friends, you thought loved you, you thought cared about you, they're trying to trip you up and trying to hold you back.
That's right. That's right. You know, when we were talking about investing in yourself, one of the things that I remember that hits on a topic that you're touching on right now is I had to learn how to set boundaries, right? And it
Mhm.
wasn't just personal space boundaries. That's not what I'm talking about. I had to learn how to say no. I had to learn how to say no, which is a very difficult thing for me because I never really had those types of boundaries before with friends and even family members, right? It was something that I did not do consistently, right? Because boundaries is something you have to do consistently. It can't just be once in a blue moon, right? And then after that, which was really stretching me, I had to learn how to say yes. Yes to new possibilities, new experiences, new relationships, new habits, right? Because I was so closed minded, because I was so used to only doing things one certain way, right? Me and a buddy were talking about this for a long time. You know, I would put in applications, when I was looking for jobs, I'd put in all these applications and I'd try to update my resume to a certain point, right? Where I was like, ah, yeah, I just added on these jobs, take off these few jobs, man. A buddy of mine was like, nah, man, you can submit your resume to one of these people who can help you boost your resume and change it up. Right. He showed me the little website to use and stuff like that. Indeed even gives you some of these websites. Right. And he was like, yo, you can create a good CV, personal resume that's professional. You know what I'm saying? Because you're a professional now. Like, he hit me to this because I was only used to doing things one way. Just shoot out a bunch of emails. I don't even care. You know, Heck no. He was like, no, 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 man. He's like, get yourself a good professional resume. Sit there and work with these people. They're gonna help you change it up, man. And literally, right, my life changed after that. I started making cover pages that went specifically for that title and role. I started using because at the time I had already worked in the field for like 6, 7 years, right? And he was like, what are you doing? You've worked for so long. You've done all these different things. Why isn't it why isn't it in your resume? Why isn't it being highlighted? All these things you've done, right? You were a case manager. You did this, that, and the third. You worked for on HUD housing. You did all sorts of stuff. Why isn't it there? Right? Why isn't it being highlighted? Right? And I was so uncomfortable, right, doing some of these things, right, because I hadn't done it before. It was stretching me. It was stretching me, right? So it was uncomfortable. Then saying yes to new opportunities put me around certain people I normally wouldn't hang with. RJ knows, I started going to these treatment teams. I'm working. You got to deal with doctors. I wasn't used to dealing with doctors, right? Like, these psychiatrists and they got their own stuff they're doing. And I don't think I belong there, right? And I think that's a barrier for some people, right? I'm like, wow, I can't say nothing. The doctor ain't gonna want to hear what I got to say. No, the doctor does want to hear what you have to say, especially when you're dealing one on one with these clients every day, right? Your opinion does matter, but I came from a background where I didn't have good self worth, right? So I didn't really feel as I belonged, right? Let's talk about some of these things, and I think we as human beings, Dr. Gaber Mate talks about this. We have this horrible relationship with guilt and shame, right? And as a child, you learn when you're supposed to be guilty, when you're not supposed to be guilty, right? And then if you do something, you're supposed to apologize real quick, and if you don't apologize, right, you get shamed, right? So we have this horrible relationship with guilt, right? And then sometimes, we even when something doesn't go right, we feel guilty, which is completely, in opposition to what that really is. Because sometimes things don't go right. We make some bad choices, right? But you shouldn't feel guilty because you didn't do something the right way the first time, right? I had to keep going back to the drawing board. And I had to keep working on things. I had to change how I looked at certain things, right? Because I had this misnomer, right, that I didn't know what I was doing, and you had this What are the imposter syndrome because you haven't been in those spaces before? Well, I had to work on that, man. There was things because of course I was going to mess up sometimes because I was learning new things and I had to have self-compassion. That's what I started doing. I started cultivating self-compassion. I did invest in myself, man. I was like, hey, look, you messed up, but you're not going to mess up the next time. You're going to learn from this. I literally had to start setting these goals for me to remind myself, right? Not to talk down to myself, creating more positive vibes. That's how I invested in myself because, like I said, I wasn't used to being in these spaces. Everything was so new for me, right? I was always overthinking things. I was always, feeling like I didn't know what I was going to do next, right? Next, when I was creating these positive vibes for myself, right? I had to get rid of toxic relationships, right? I was like, this ain't gonna fly. I can't be dealing with somebody where they trying to put me out the house. We fighting, we doing this and that. Not when I'm hitting this next stride. And and,
Not
and
get
look,
put
I'm
out the
being real with
house.
y'all. Yeah, folks, you know how it goes when you're in a relationship that ain't really working the way it's supposed to work, right? We get real vindictive with each other, right? So look, I said, I said, not in this next step in my life. I packed my stuff. I said, okay, I'm gone, right? Because I knew where I wanted to go. And where I wanted to go, it wasn't going to, a DV charge wasn't going to do me good on that ride, right? You couldn't come on this ride with me. I'm sorry, because I'm trying to do something different, right?
Well, I like what you're saying there, right? Like for all of us, we have to understand that your environment is your interest rate. And
Mhm.
so for some of us, we have to upgrade our inputs, who we listen to, what we watch, and what we normalize. And for for a lot of us, and this was something that I discovered as I got older. If the people around you in your circle are always stuck, don't be surprised when you are too.
Right,
And so at some point in time, we have to kind of take a stock of why everyone around us is at certain points, why they've only accomplished things up to a certain degree, why they've only made it to this far in the story, and kind of take stock of that. Like, because as my dad used to tell me and my siblings when we were younger, experience is bought and paid for. I don't have to experience something firsthand to recognize it's not a good idea. So when I'm
right.
sitting around and I'm looking at everyone else and I'm seeing that you only made it to this point because you did these things, let me not do those things if I only want to make it to that point. Because as you alluded to, the people around you are either compounding your growth or they're charging you fees. And so, for me, I'm trying to get to this. I'm trying to get to this money. And so if I'm trying to get to this money, everybody that's on this team has to be focused on getting to this money as well. Everyone's got a role to play. It's like being on an NBA team. Some
Right,
people's some
right,
people's job is to block shots. Like you look at somebody like Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman on every team that he was on, he played his role. His role was to get rebounds. It was in his contract. He was only allowed to take 2 shots per game. So Dennis Rodman, by not focusing on shooting, guess what he was able to do? He was able to be the best rebounder in the NBA.
yep,
During his prime, Dennis Rodman was out rebounding everyone. Because guess what? He was focused on running his race and doing what he was supposed to do in order for the team to be successful. So he could go out and go party the night before and then come to the game be still hungover from the night before, but he only was focused on rebounding. He wasn't focused on doing nothing else. He wasn't
right,
focused on scoring 30, 40 points. Nope. He out here just grabbing rebounds and getting it to MJ, Scotty, Tony Kukoc, Luke Longley, whoever was open. He was just get there to pull the boards down and get it to somebody open. That's what his job was.
right,
And that's where, for a
right.
lot of us, we have to look at how is our environment helping us? How is it helping us? And also, how is it hurting us? Because if things don't help you, they're hurting you. And if we are looking to invest in ourselves and get the maximum return on our investment, we have to look at everything that's going on around us, not just the bits and pieces we want to look at. We got to look at everything. We got to look at the totality of everything that we are attached to. But that brings me to my next point, right? And this is
Uh-huh.
something that I always hear people talk about, especially when they're starting something new. Starting something new, starting something that's uncomfortable is that one day lie. One day I'm going to do this. And all that is basically procrastination in a well wrapped box.
Hmm.
As long as we're talking about what we're going to do tomorrow or the day after that or the next day or in 2 weeks or 3 days from now, we're never doing it. Your future you is tired of waiting for you to show up and present yourself. And for a lot of us, we don't really realize that you don't wake up disciplined. Like that Beyonce song, I Woke Up Like This, where the lyrics are I woke up like this. I don't know what the actual song is, but she, like in the song, one of the lyrics is I woke up like this. You don't wake up disciplined. You have to practice it every single day. It's no different than like when Khalil's talked about being in recovery. Being in recovery is an everyday decision. Every day when I wake up, from the moment I wake up and I swing my legs out the bed,
My
I got to be
God.
focused on staying and doing the right thing. Same thing with being disciplined. You have to, when your alarm clock goes off, however you wake up, you open your eyes, you swing out of the bed, you drop down to a knee, thank the Lord for allowing you to see another day above ground. You have to be dedicated and focused to staying on task and staying on your purpose and staying on what your intentions are for the day. For a
Hmm.
lot of us, we struggle with that because we're easily distracted. We got phones, we got social media, we got the TV, we got the news, we got the government, we got, our baby mama, our baby daddy, our boo thing, the dog. There's so many different things that are pushing and pulling our attention that we do not take the time to be intentional about our own selves. And as
Yep.
my mom used to tell me when I was a child, ain't nobody gonna care about you more than you care about yourself.
That's right. What you spoke to earlier really hit me because, you know, um, as I started moving forward in my professional career, right? Talking to mentors and listening to critics and people who were helping me get to where I needed to go. And yeah, I had to open my ears and listen to some criticism, right? I had to be willing to accept criticism. I even had to take criticism from RJ, right? when when I worked for the program that he was helping on, right? He used to help supervise. I had to listen to criticism, right? And one of the things besides that, learning how to understand criticism and taking it as constructive criticism, right? Helped me. It helped me, like I said, because I had barriers. I didn't want to hear nothing from anybody, right? So it helped me get to a point where I can accept criticism, right? And then I was able to focus more on some of my true goals, right? And what am I alluding to, right? When I say true goals, I had so many things I wanted to do, but they were actually a waste of time. Like, of course, everybody has these desires, right? But I had some goals that I wanted to obtain. And in order to meet these goals, right, I had to literally cut off a lot of the other goals that I had. It sounds bad, but I had so many, all these different things I wanted to do, right? I had to literally cut off some of those goals that were distracting me, right? Because of course, you want to be in a relationship, right? Uh, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you want to get a new car. You want to do certain things that aren't going to be good for you financially, right? All those different things I had to put aside because I had a hoopty. RJ know what I'm talking about. I had a hoopty. I had a Cadillac. Remember my little Cadillac?
Yeah.
Hey, look, look, it had a few dents on it and everything, but it was smooth. I ain't gonna lie, the leather was smooth in there. I couldn't buy a new car, even though I could afford a new car. I could not buy one because it would distract me from my goal. My money would be going there instead of investing in me learning, getting the type of using the type of resources that I would need to get to that next level. All my resources would have went to that car, right? All my resources would have went into that relationship, right? I literally, and I'm telling you guys, it's a lonely road. When you start investing in yourself and you start noticing some of the things that need to change in your life, right? Like I said, I had to listen to the critics. Some of the critics were saying some good stuff to me, right? Because, you know, I, I was used to being in relationships. I was used to having a woman on my arm. I started listening to some of the critics, right? Even my mother was a critic. Hey, you need to take this time for yourself. Don't get in another relationship right now. You need to focus on what you need to focus on. That's my mentors. Yeah, you ain't trying to get married right now, man. You need to focus on what you need to focus on, right?
Khalil, yeah,
I
Khalil was easily distracted by the big booty girls.
easily distracted, right? And the funniest thing is, I had these true goals, right? That I needed to get taken care of, right? And look, a brand new TV wasn't gonna help me in that goal, right? Brand new car wasn't gonna help me in that goal. All these fancy clothes, nice watches and different stuff, because I was very materialistic in back in the day where, because I had some decent jobs, I made some money, and I would spend it. I would spend a lot of my money on these material things. When I went back to school, I didn't have that extra money to spend on those things because I could not let go of the focus. I had a true goal. The other goals, yes. All right, I've achieved a lot of those goals now. You know why? Because I put those on the back burner and I focused on my one true goal. And that was to obtain my license, so I can become a therapist. That was my goal. I wanted to do that since I was 18. You get what I'm saying? And it took me until I was 40 to do it, right? That tells you something. A lot of things distracted me on my way to do that, right? Because I had so many other goals, but they were distractions, right? And the funniest thing is, God bless me. You get what I'm saying? When I actually stopped chasing all these other material things, God bless me. You know what I mean? I got better with my finances, right? I got better with the type of people that I wanted to put around me with my decision making, right? And I was blessed. I tell people that all the time. Like, one of the things that I struggled with, right, was money. I don't have the same issues I have with money before. You know what I mean? Like being in debt. I'm not running around in debt like I was. You know, these are things that happen when I started cutting off some of the things that were distractions. They were just mere distractions because, hey, you can always get a watch when you've achieved what you need to achieve. You can always get a watch, right? I don't need a new watch every single year now. I might have a few, but I don't need a new one every year, right? These are things that I've learned to do, right? Also, you know, I learned how to reward myself, right? Like I didn't have, remember I told you I didn't have the self compassion. I was used to talking down to myself, but I wasn't used to building myself up, giving myself love, self-care, giving myself the recognition I needed. And now I don't minimize my achievements, right? I was walking around sometimes, and people be like, "Oh man, that's good that you went out and did this and that." And that ain't nothing. I don't do that anymore. I said, "Yeah, man," and it took some work, and I'm very proud of myself. You know, I've changed. I reward myself. I tell myself, "Hey, man, you know what? You did a good job." Right? You know, I I don't have that same type of negative attitude I had about myself now because I've changed. I've invested in myself. I've done the things that I needed to do to get to this point, and I still want to go further, right? There's stuff I still need to do, right? But I'm not in that type of situation where, I have all these distractions. No, I know what I got my eyes set on the prize, and I don't really have the same type of distractions because I removed so many. In the last 10 years, I removed so many.
Hmm.
And it's so funny because when you come up in chaos, right? When you're a part of that chaos, it becomes natural. It was almost natural for me to be involved in some drama. It was natural. It actually, and I tell people in therapy all the time, it felt so soothing sometimes. You know what I mean? Because when there was no drama going on, when there was no, arguments and confrontation going on, I thought something was wrong, right? Because I was always used to being in the middle of something, some drama.
Hmm.
When it was quiet, I was like, man, something bound to happen. You be paranoid because you're like, something's got to happen, right? It's too quiet, right? And that was my life. That the up and down, the roller coaster. And life has ebbs and flows, but not like this. I mean, I'm talking about my lows were low and my highs were real high. So you hit the ground, man, you better bounce back up because it's rough. And so learning how to remove a lot of that from my life. You know, my mother always talks about it. She said, "Man, there was times where I wouldn't hear from you for 2 weeks. I thought you were dead because she didn't know where I would be. Jails or institutions, she didn't know. She'd have to call the morgue looking for me. When I talk about being out there, crazy like life living, right? These are things that help change my mind. I was like, I got used to that. That was actually comfortable for me. Being uncomfortable, right, was being around people who were doing the right thing. That wasn't natural for me. So now it's more natural for me. I'm far removed from what I used to do, but it took me a while to get to that place of understanding where I don't have that type of stress. That drama was so stressful. Everybody say, "Man, you great." Yeah, I'm pretty sure I earned every gray hair. I earned every gray hair, on my face, you know, and lost my hair, right? But I say all that to say this, man, that it's been a blessing to be able to invest in myself now. I could have never have done this without being around people who were helpful. These were people, and I had these mentors who were like, "Hey, if you want to do something different, right, you got to change everything." You get what I'm saying? They said you couldn't just change one thing. You got to change everything. That's something that I learned in recovery. Being around people in recovery, they was like, you got to change everything. I was like, what you mean? Everything, everything. And by doing that, I learned how to invest in myself. I learned how to love myself. I learned how to put myself in positions where I would be successful.
Well, what you just spoke to, and I'm glad that you talked about that. What you just spoke to though was the glow up that nobody talks about or nobody posts. Most people do not understand that the real elevation, the real flex, the real growth, the real glow up is boring. It's boring
Very
because it's consistent. It's built on routines. It's built on boundaries. Hell, it's built on therapy. And most importantly, it's built on learning. Where most of us, we get tied up in things is we want everything to be flashy. We want everyone to see us do the things, not truly
Mhm.
understanding that nobody posts the late night study sessions or the early workouts, or the options where they're choosing the hard difficult thing instead of the easy simple thing.
Right.
And nobody ever talks about those things. We whisper about those things, we assume those things, but nobody says that, hey, I had to cut things off. I had to cut people off in order to see change. Because as you alluded to in a mindfulness minute that, we posted on TikTok, if nothing changes, then nothing changes. Everybody wants the highlight reel without the workout behind it. Everyone wants to shine and to have the platinum plaques and the Grammys and the
That's right.
gold chains and the platinum grill, not really understanding the work that went into creating that song that became a hit, not realizing the late night staying up penning that song, getting the verse just right, getting the hook just right, getting the delivery just right. Because I mean, even when you watch that movie Straight Outta Compton, where
Hmm.
NWA first came together, and they're writing that song, My 6'4".
Yep.
Easy E, his first time dropping that line, cruising down the street in My 6'4". The way he delivered it the first time, they all bust out laughing. It
Yeah.
took them a few times in order to get his delivery just right to be the legendary hook that we know it to be now. And that's where for a lot of us we don't really understand, because we don't see the hard work on the back end. We see people in the gym flexing and being swole, but we don't see them lifting weight, dieting, drinking water, getting adequate sleep, adequate rest, measuring macros, carbs, proteins, all
Right.
of those
That's
different
right.
things that go
All those.
into doing those things. We just
Yeah.
see that, damn, this man looks like a goddamn anime character when he takes his shirt off. Or damn, she's swole as fuck. Not realizing there's work and there's sacrifice that goes into that, because anything worth having is worth sacrificing for.
Right.
And if everyone could do it, everyone would. It wouldn't. I mean, just really think about that. And so for a lot of us, you know, and this was something I had to learn as a young man. If you do not invest in yourself, you will always be working for people who did.
Mm-hmm.
You either want to be a boss or you want to be a worker. Because as long as you do not invest in yourself, you will always be working for someone else who was willing to invest in themselves, who took the time to invest in themselves. If you want to be where bosses are at, that's what comes along with being the boss. The boss is making the hard decisions now to be able to make the easy decisions later. And for me, I always envision what keeps me in line, what keeps me in check, what keeps me from not smelling myself or feeling myself is I envision my future self waiting for me down the line, and I don't want to embarrass them.
Mm.
And so when I envision myself of where I want to see myself, the things I hope to accomplish, am I, and this goes back to something I said in a previous episode, am I being the person that I envision myself being? If I'm not doing the things that align with who I am envisioning myself being, then I need to figure that out and I need to go back to the drawing board. I need to stop what I'm doing, go back to the
Right.
drawing board. But for a lot of us, like I said, we got to focus on staying on task, staying on purpose. Fuck the distractions. Fuck the outside noise, the ancillary things that are just popping up. Because as long as you allow those things to distract you, you're not on purpose. You're not working out your intention. You are scattered at that point. And it's not until you are able to focus on the clear direction in which you are going. You got to envision yourself like one of those thoroughbred racehorses that has the blinders on. They can't
The
see to the
blind
right or
spot,
to the
right.
left of them. They can only
Yeah.
see what's in front of them.
Right in front.
So just imagine how great you could be if you're that dialed in. But for a lot of us, we have life, we have calamity, catastrophe, chaos. A lot of it is self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted. That's right.
Self-inflicted where we can't get out of our own way. And it's not until for a lot of us, this was something I had to learn, was getting out of my own way, knowing when to shut the hell up, being willing to listen and not take everything personally, that I was able to tap into a whole nother level of growth, elevation, and accomplishment. Because a lot of times, as my dad used to point out, stress between you and the task. Me being prideful, me not being willing to listen, me not willing to shut the hell up and not have my feelings invested in things and looking at things from a logical standpoint, I was in my own way. Once I got out of my own way, once I stopped having my feelings and emotions tied to everything, once I stopped
And
making excuses, because excuses are tools of the incompetent, as that are used to build monuments to nothingness. As long as you dwell on excuses, you shall seldom succeed. And as long as you offer yourself excuses, as long as you dwell on excuses, you'll never have your goals. You'll never accomplish your goals. You'll never be able to obtain your dreams, and you will never self-actualize as long as you continue to dwell on excuses. And for a lot of us, we struggle with the excuses. We will find an excuse
yep. For everything.
out of our back pocket every single time. Every single time things get inconvenient or things get hard, we will find an excuse. And so with this particular episode, as I said, it's one that is very, very important to me, because for a lot of us, no one is going to care about you more than you care about yourself. And until you tap into caring about yourself more than you're expecting other people to care about you, you will always find yourself, working from behind, working out of a hole, working from a place of deficit instead of a place of abundance. So we are going to end the conversation there. This is Try Not to Overthink It signing out. I'm RJ.
And I'm Kalhil.
If you like what you heard, like what you saw, we ask that you please like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you do not miss out on any future content. If you would like to support us even more, we can be listened to. I don't know why you'd want to listen to us instead of watch us. We are some very good looking people. My mommy and daddy made this and they did a damn good job. So if you would like to support us even more, watch us, but then also listen to us. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, pretty much anywhere you can get your audio file, we can be located. If you would like to support us even more, the links to the social media, both TikTok as well as Instagram, will be linked down below, where we drop pieces of content every single day, shorts from the episodes, as well as pieces of content that we call Mindfulness Minutes that both Kalhil and I craft every single day, geared towards helping each one of us improve our lives 1 minute at a time. But this is Try Not to Overthink It, signing out, and we will catch you guys next time. Peace.